The Nelson Mandela effect. Most people exposed to the Mandela effect phenomenon hear about Nelson Mandela and the dual memory. Some people remembering him serving as president in South Africa, while others remember him passing away much earlier in prison. For me, the Nelson Mandela effect is not as strong as perhaps 100 or 150 others, but I do have memory and a timeline that supports he did pass away in prison. My first teacher when I was age 4 was an elderly black man. He taught me very basic things about the town and walking on dirt roads and about God and heaven and hell and things like that. He's a really nice guy. And then I started my formal education, kindergarten, so forth, with the astronauts, religion, military, 100 great figures in history, the great composers, Rome, all that stuff that everybody had to learn. Since I was taught by an older black man early in life, I had no racial bias, or actually, I was more in favor, if anything, of the black race. I just didn't have a problem with them. They were just people to me, just like everybody else, just like the Portuguese in town, the Germans, the French. Everybody was just people. So I heard that Nelson Mandela was imprisoned, and they said that, well, the news claimed it was espionage, which means he was anti-government, which was apartheid at that time in South Africa. In other words, an iron hand rule of racial class. That's what apartheid was. And besides the government issues, he was also charged with traveling without a passport. They just laid as much as they could on him so they could put him away. And he served 8 or 9 years in various jails and prisons before being placed in an island prison off of South Africa. It's about 4.5 miles offshore, where he spent a narrative, or reported, 18 years before being released at age 72 and then becoming president of South Africa after all that turmoil and beatdown. But this is how I remember it. I was in grammar school, news broke, like CBS, Walter Cronkite, talking about he was thrown in jail. And then a couple of years later, they gave another report that said he was serious ill with TB. And this jail is very difficult to exist in. The cells were literally closet size. You could lay down, I think they were 7 feet by 7 feet, a ridiculously small cell. There's information online. And you know he was given the worst of the worst food, what was left over, because he was a problem. He was the wrong color. They were pretty much locking him up and throwing away the key on 18 years in those conditions. So time went on. This is before the internet. And then in 1995, we had Windows 95, America Online. We started to get more kind of legit internet news, like free speech. Then we had Netscape. And then in 1997, 1998, we had Napster, where we could like rip songs offline for free. And it started to take off. It started to develop before it got clamped down again. But there was a period there of very free speech, and many opinions and ideas were exchanged freely, including very illegal ones that really had to be cleaned up. There was some horrible stuff on there, really bad. and kind of untraceable. So there's really bad stuff. My son had been born in 1991, so he was growing up. I was doing the usual thing. I was working really hard, overtime. I was a coach for a baseball team for a few years and just living life pretty normally, watching the news, fully bought in on the news and the space program and necessary war and the whole deal. I took the hook, the bait, the whole thing. So then there was no news of Nelson Mandela for like 10 years. I had just heard that he was, like I said, in prison, very sick, and that's the last I knew about it. In 2019, 7-8 years after his narrative reported death, in 2019, when Mandela Effect Awareness found me, I was told that he served as president of South Africa. And this was news to me. This was almost crazy to me that he served as president of South Africa. He was released from prison at age 72 after dealing with harsh conditions. Life expectancy in Africa is under 70. This whole thing doesn't add up whatsoever. So it's some sort of multi-timeline or timeline entanglement situation. And like I said, I'm not 100% sure either way, but with my history and the way I watched the news and the way I bought into the whole thing, it's a very, very strong possibility that I would be aware Mandela became president and served, I think it was 4 or 5 years. Have a good week, everyone.